Oh, man, eh? Hello. Welcome. My name is Tony Curry. Hello. Welcome. My name is Tony Curry. Nah. I'll just be myself if that's all right with you lot. Tonight, I will be your host, your poet, your confidant, your storyteller, who will tell stories about a boy, me, about a young man, me, and about my dad, who was a man, and about my brother, who's also a man. A coincidence, a man sharing stories about men that he loved. Well, let's see. First, I want to take you into a party. Who doesn't like a party? It's the mid-70s. It's in the front room, back room, kitchen, garden, street of our council semi. There's a large crowd of stylish South Africans down from South London. Aunties, uncles, cousins. They are dressed smart with confidence. In contrast, I'm a bit of a council oik. I'm around 10 or 11 years old. I weave in and out. My cheeks are pulled. And I'm kissed. There's also blokes there, geezers, who never leave the kitchen. Large tankards, party sevens. If you enter there, you hear large laughs and swearing. I mainly stay in the dance area, which is the living room. But for this night, it's been transformed. The furniture has been put in the back garden under a tarp. And the music, oh my days, the music. Chirpy, 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 cheep, cheep. The Stones, the Beatles. Love, love me do. You know I love you. I'll always be true. So please, love me do. Oh, love me do. It's truly a riot. My brother Dave normally DJs. And me, I love to dance. I dance with Dee, Kipper's wife. Kipper always says the same thing every year. You'll dance with Dee, Tone, won't you? And I do. And Dee is gorgeous, a slight elfin woman who laughs at me all night as we dance. And then there's my dad. My dad is the wise owl, the main man, the class clown. All night you could hear, Shep. 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 He makes everyone laugh. And he gets drunk. But he's a top drunk. He's worked out that line of being high and very happy and daft. And he can keep going and going and going. The stylish South Africans love him, especially the women. My mum laughs and smiles. The men love him. The youngsters love him. Everyone loves him. Dad doesn't, as a rule, dance. This was always a thing between Mum and Dad. I'd remember the arguments on a Sunday morning when they'd been out the night before and Dad had got drunk, fallen over the band on the stage or something similar. I'd always hear Mum say the same thing. "I love to go dancing, Brian, just to be with you." But Dad could just never be with Mum. He was a born entertainer with a crowd he had to please. So anyway, as I said, Dad didn't dance, but he did do what he called finger dancing. And he was good at it. Way before England hijacked Neil Diamond's Sweet Caroline, it was the anthem to the parties at 59 Maiden Lane. I could hear, "It's time." It may have been Aunt Edna who say it's time. Neil Diamond's Hot August Night is pulled from its cover. I remember my brother Mark got Dad this album. I remember thinking it was too contemporary, too rock for Dad. But Mark knew his onions. What an album. Cherry Cherry, Solitary Man, our act, and of course, Sweet Caroline. And so it begins. Dad's in the kitchen, of course, and we are assembled in a circle waiting for the grand priest. Ba ba da ba 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 la da 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 ba la da 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 ba 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 ba. And then first came a spring. So without knowing it, I was witnessing pure unalterated theatre in my own front room. It's part tribal, part ceremony. It's something I've never experienced since. And then a chorus of Shep, 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 ba ba da da ba da ba da da. Shep, 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 ba ba da ba da ba da. Shep, 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 ba ba da ba 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 ba. And then finally he emerges at the lounge door from the kitchen. He stands there impassioned, a demigod, fueled by cigars, fags and party sevens. We go crazy. We cheer. I dance. Hey! No dancing, Tone, he says. Instead, he lifts his fingers so they're adjacent to his face, and he extends each of his first four fingers. And we all copy. We all follow Shep. We all follow his rhythm. You know, it's funny. It doesn't matter your age, your gender, or how cool you are. We all follow Shep. Until finally, Sweet Caroline, bum, bum, bum. Good times never felt so good. Sweet Caroline, bum, bum, bum. Good times never felt so good. And in those moments, those moments, good times never felt so good. Brian Alison Keith Sheppard, or Dad. Born Balham, only child, grammar school, bright, but prone to mischief. He was all sport, 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 drinking and laughing. Dad was best in moments. It was the everyday that he struggled with. And me, I was born in Crawley Hospital in 1965. For those who don't know where Crawley is, it lies a direct line between London and Brighton. It's 19 miles from Brighton. I'm the youngest of four lads. There's myself, then there's him, then Dave, then Mark the eldest. My mum was born in Cape Town, South Africa, so when it comes to my ethnicity, I am another. Sometimes I say white, black African. I can even throw in the odd Asian title, as trigger warning, I'll get called a Paki when I was growing up. Not the compliment that you'd think it is. We have fun growing up. As I said, Dad was great in moments. My childhood seemed to be filled with trips, 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 days out, parties and holidays. I know a lot of kids say the same thing, but it felt like one long summer holiday. If I close my eyes, I could really feel it. It's warm, lazy warm, the sort of days that belong to a golden age, endless sun in endless time with endless summers. The car is maroon, we spud suds onto its body, its lacquered layered paint burns. It's the 70s, so it's big. Big cars meant for US highways, commandeered by cockneys for trips to Brighton or a local parade for a paper and a pint of milk. Phil shouts from across the road, "You lot behaving yourselves, bloody reprobates." He laughs, taking his once playful Millwall energy with him. Cars. Dad loved his big cars. We could never afford a decent motor, but Dad loved his big cars. I remember the back seat, or the settee in the back, where all four of us lads would sit with Whiskey the dog. This is way before seatbelts, obviously. I remember that epic trip to Sheffield in that car, or something similar. On that trip, Whiskey the dog went missing for a week. He was a bit of a dude, our Whiskey. He was a mongrel, a black and white dog, mixed up identity, who just kind of did his own thing. So it's quite in keeping when he pegged it out the front door from Auntie Joyce and Uncle Doug's. At home, he'd often get off and not be seen for days, but we never bothered. After a few days, my dad would find him waiting by his car. And my dad would say to him, "You want to come home, son?" And in would come Whiskey. Still, Whiskey, it's a southern dog, so he wouldn't have known about this northern city, so God knows what happened to him. After a few days AWOL, he finally returns, but the drama didn't end there. On the way home, we managed to knacker not just one, but two motors, and we had to come home in a limousine. We thought we had no choice but to finish the journey by getting a cab. So we went to the cab office, and the cab operator looked at us four lads, a dog on a string. He'd lost his collar somehow, don't know how. Mum, Dad. Dad visibly traumatised of not losing one, but two cars, a stash of cash and a watch. So he says to us, "When I finish my shift, I'll take you home." So we waited, and what comes round the corner but a limo, a limousine. Couldn't believe it. We had no money, but Mum knew she could rely on Mrs. Wakefield. So Mrs. Wakefield, or Wakey, stepped up. We bought fish and chips. The driver sat in our kitchen eating his fish and chips while Dad held court. Priceless. Oh yeah, the other thing about this poem is Phil Hayes, top man. Now Phil was always out running or doing something like that. Now Phil managed the Adventure Playground, or as us lads would call it, the Adventure. This memory jumps out from 1974. It's my blue bike, customised with the biggest cow-horned handlebars. I ride it like Evel Knievel. I cycle past the shops to the Adventure. It is cup final morning. It is Liverpool v Newcastle. At the Adventure, it's the usual scene. A pilot and co-pilot in a helicopter. Some lads on construction, hammers in hand. And the usual daredevils on the rope swing. A sheer drop, 20 foot, no safety net. I climb a ladder, just missing those nails. Along the ramp, just missing the holes. Down the slide, missing the screws. Back up onto the ramp and down the fireman's pole and into the shed. I'm met by dense cig smoke and loud cockney voices supping from large cracked mugs full of steaming tea. The TV's on, showing a build-up to the final. There's Kevin Keegan. I'm bricking it in case I'm spotted for sneaking in. Then Dave Essex does the chorus and they all join in. Too much more than a pretty face, I don't think so. The Adventure. The Adventure Playground. What a name to conjure up an idea of a youngster's idea of paradise. An adventure where you can just get out a hammer and bang in a few nails, boom, 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 or get out a saw, And go on a catwalk, magic as it bounced. And the slide, dangerous, epic. There'd be a pecking order. Older lads in tank tops with fags perched out of lips who'd leap off to land on the giant swing. I would never dare, but oh how I'd watch. If you're the first in line, be prepared for a load of leaping lads to land on top of you. You would groan and they would laugh. So there's the adventure, and then there was our bikes. We made our bikes by going to the tip and waiting while the men looked the other way. And on we go. And we get a wheel or even a frame. Cocker pins were important and your bearings often went. Grease was good and oil. You never had a complete bike and your wheels would buckle and squeak, but you get to use hammers and spanners and stuff. Bikes. Do kids today go to the tip and scavenge for bikes? I very much doubt it. It's a different time. It's always a different time. So, life pretty much rumbled on, much like a clickety-clack train to Brighton. Around 1976, I started getting seriously into music. You're either a punk, a Ted, a skinhead, a rude boy, or a mod. We were mods. We definitely weren't hard. Brighton days take me away with your backstreet pubs. We get called mate. I'm home. My art home. I remember that jam gig, first gig away for a day. And me starred in blue corduroy jeans and blue corduroy jacket. As Mum said, you look nice. First gig away for a day, me, Andy C and Big Dave. Met up with Jez, who was cool and confident at home, that real mod, Dave Prentice. Mods on the beach, there was a film crew to kind of recreate the 60s, kind of quadrophenia. And there was me starred in blue corduroy jeans and blue corduroy jacket. I want to wear denim, my 501s. Remember Dave and Andy had Parkers with targets on the back. We were targets or potential ones in Brighton that day. I never had a stand ticket. Went back for weeks at school. Talk about jumping over the balcony or something like that. But in the end, when they came out, the noise just blew me away. And that was it. I was hooked to sweat, noise and beer. At 16, I went to join Navy. I really wanted it. I spent all day doing all these tests. I remember the other lads with their posh, with suits on that. But funny enough, I was the only one to get in. As I came home on the train, I thought about my new life at sea. I thought about all the places I go to and that. But I never went in. I remember the racing, Brighton Dogs and Brighton Horses. How we seemed to go every week. And sometimes we win, more often not we lose. And on this night when we finally had a winner, I lost a ticket because I was just that pissed. And my daddy just laughed because he's pissed as me. And now when we were kids, we used to pass through towers in the town and cheer. Oh, happy days. Then strange days. A few years later, I went to this club and I kind of got off with someone. We left the club without saying a word to each other, and I followed her up this hill. And we got in this car. I think it's a Beetle. And we had sex. Got out, walked back down the hill, still not saying a word to each other, and I rejoined the others that didn't believe me. I went for a kind of gay stage, a real kind of new romantic stage, where we go to this club and we queue for Boy George look-alike kisses. My mum sat me down. See, I was dressed and spoke and that. And she says, "Do you like boys?" And I says, "Ma, I just love Brighton days. I love the intrigue, Brighton Rock and Mona Lisa villains. More Bow Bells than Brighton Bells. And now sometimes there was a right edge, as Brighton boys would see through us town boys and would wait for that first kick, which thankfully never came for we weren't the slightest hard. And here I am sat on the beach staring out to sea. And all these feelings came back to me. And I stare at the pier, have been burnt and broken. And I think about the boys and that. I think about the girls and that. I think about dreams and that. I think about the artists and that. And if time is compulsion, we head to revolution. And if time is compulsion, we head to revolution. And if time is compulsion, we head to revolution of bright and wonderful love-torn memories. Take me back to the sea, take me back to the sea. Love, reign over me. hanging out with my dad. Me and my dad were great mates, pals, which is a rare thing indeed between a father and son. So, as I said, in Brighton days, we'd go racing together, we'd go drinking together. Early as a kid, we just hung out. I think as I'm the youngest, and there's 5 years age difference between me and him, then there'd be many times it'd just be me and my dad. My mum worked as a waitress, so there'd be many evenings where we just left on our own and get up to our own devices. I remember this one evening when Dad opens up a great big packet of salt and vinegar crisps. A few mouthfuls in, he stops and he says, "Oh, what do you think of these, Toe? I'm not sure they taste a bit stale." I tried one. "Yeah, they are a bit." "I know what," my dad says. "We'll put them in the oven." He could see from my confused face. Crisps, Toe, are just potatoes, and you put potatoes in the oven. So on goes the oven, in goes a tray of crisps, while we sit down in front of the telly, until Saturday night is rudely interrupted by a large bang, an explosion coming from the kitchen. We jump up to be met with smoke and a smell of burning, glass everywhere, whiskey going berserk. The crisps are literally blown off the oven door. My dad's reaction was priceless. "Jeez," he said. Then he just kept repeating, "Jeez." He wasn't angry or upset, more renewed respect for the laws of science. Later, when my mum came home, the look on her face. My dad says, "Well, it was the crisps. They tasted stale, didn't they, Tone?" Then there was a time he took me to the park and taught me how to get a long whippy stick, stick a crab apple in the end, and how you could launch it miles. We aimed at the park keeper's hut and waited for him to come out, a grumpy Scotsman searching for the cause of, "Who threw that?" while we are miles away, behind a hedge, laughing and laughing and laughing. So, Dad was good for fun. He also wanted to bring us up as any dad would in his own image. His values carved into us. One being, be respectful to women. 2, there's no need to seek out fights. And 3, if you're faced with a problem, then son, you just got to go through with it. An example of this when I found myself fighting at the age of around 13 or 14, not by choice, but I was fighting the same lad twice. I remember when I was going out to fight him the second time, I still had the lumps and bruises from the first fight. I looked like I was going to be hanged. Ugh. My dad just stood by the door. His only words being, "You're playing a bit rough lately, son." And that was it. A few wise words to sum up the awful situation I found myself in, but the advice I very much needed. Then, when I was around 17, and he was 49, he left us. Bang. My reaction to him going was to be someone else. The day he left, I was angry. So angry. A copper said to my brother, "You better keep an eye on him." Later, I went to my room and I just lay there. There was this B-side by Tears for Fears, Ideas for Opiates. It seemed to fit. At the wake, I stood upright and stuck out my chest. "This round's on Dad," little man in big man shoes. "Oh, I've not got any on. I better put some on." I took on his job. I sat in his chair. Instrumentation, calibration. Fred said he'd never known anyone to learn so fast. I'd chat and balloon about like he did. I even took on the role of social secretary. Later, the factory moved. You know, there are no windows in the new factory. Dad had told Mum before. I don't know why that's important, but it said it made him depressed. Later, I could stay at no more. So I jumped over a wall and I ended up in Spain. At first, I was all cockney chirpy, but pretty soon the blues kicked in. Old lags fixed me with dull stares. They'd rant and rave at Sassenachs. Others punched and bullied, but I didn't really care. Drinking into this void like a boat with no rudder, I floated at the mercy and swell the Balearic tides, of Brits fornicating, pissing and fighting. My lifeboat came in the form of miscreants, vagabonds, losers. I felt right at home. I saw all the dreams of nice girls and bad girls. I jumped right overboard, barely catching my breath. I need to spit out their dreams and suck them right out. Later, I'd come home and lurch up the road. Mum and brother didn't recognise me. I was simply being someone else. I was one lost soul, truth to be told, one lost kid. Drinking was my thing. What do I do when faced with such a problem? I didn't have any tools I needed. I was a boy with a cause, a black hole with a cause. Later, I still talk about my dad, how he loved sport but shunned fitness. He just loved being in, bless him. And I continued to play. That's what I thought I'd do, to continue to play, to drink and laugh and try to get off with women. That was it, really. No real deep inspection for me and maybe for all men. Maybe it takes time to work it all out. I did what others would do. I got on with things, like fall in love, travel. We all, as I say, had to get on. My mum, as you'd expect, felt Dad's early loss very hard to handle. But she survived. But surviving isn't the same as living, is it? Mum, once she found her feet, she tapped into a beautiful spirit of connection and benevolence. She took in lodgers, ambulance men. She was always looking for who she could mother. She volunteered. She worked down the adventure. We all, as I say, just had to get on. My brother, who I was always so close to, married when Dad was still alive. He married a Cooper, which made Dad really happy because he knew the Coopers. So at the wedding, it felt like two families blending. Myself and Yvonne would spend many evenings with him and his wife Bev, laughing. As I say, as I was the closest in age to my brother, I've been the receiving end of his particular brand of sense of humour. I remember that trip to Butlins, Bognor. We had an unplanned holiday. It was unplanned, as we were supposed to go and see Uncle Clem in South Wales and go camping. But that's when Daddy's first heart attack. He was 39. That's no age, is it? So he felt he couldn't do the big trip. So that's how we ended up in Butlins, Bognor. It's funny looking back. I would have been about 7 and he would have been about 12, but he didn't feel that much older to me back then. Butlins back then was a kid's dream. They had this huge scale electric set. We could never afford one. And 3 fairground rides all day. All day! And there was this massive room just full of punch bags hanging from the ceiling. In we go, then they'd disappear. Then thwack! A punch bag would hit me. Then thwack! Then thwack! Oh, then thwack! Oh, Gordon Bennett. He'd been absolute hysterics. I was the dimwit, the comedy foil, and I played my part impeccably. Then there was Everest, a kid's version of Everest in play form. The idea that he had to somehow scale this huge plastic monolith. Now he saw his opportunity. He got the kids to either be defenders or attackers. Defenders would sit atop Everest and beat back the attackers. Much wrestling and throwing about went on. I don't think I ever made it top Everest. I just remember falling down and giggling. And then a few years later, he sadly got lost. His marriage broke up and he ended up leaving her and the kids. He met a new partner and fathered another child, but that relationship proved tricky and they split up. And by now we had 3 small children. Looking back, he became lost. He was lodging. He was drinking, smoking, impulsive with money. His mind was in overdrive, a real tour de force. I just couldn't rein him in. And then he became violent. He squared up to me at my mum's. Yvonne, to her credit, stepped in and saved my bacon, because if we'd fought, he'd have killed me. During the altercation, he goaded me, saying I was always shit at boxing. And then, when I was 32, and he was 37, he took his own life. Some call it a selfish act, the ultimate selfish act, to take your own life. Partners, ex-partners, friends, mothers, brothers. There is a hole, a great big hole. Because he just went through that door, which is now shut. He just went. He had this way of running, intent and swift. He held 400-metre records. I was all gawky. Gawky Tony, he'd call me. I've not even told you his name, have I? It's like South African tradition. Like we don't name the dead. It's something about taking away the spirit or something. But anyway, back to me. I was all skin and bone, and a total lack of coordination, sometimes due to too much inebriation, truth to be told. But he glided with intent, like a Jaguar car. You know that game Jenga, where you've got to be careful to pull out one slab, as you can see how precarious it can be. One false move, and it can all fall down. He's fell down. There is a light that will never come on again. I search for him, but I don't even realise I'm looking, but I search for him. Even though it's 27 years ago, I search for him. We're like doctors conducting an autopsy. He never got over losing his dad. Now, I'm going to break with tradition, and I'm going to name the dead. Not just his name, but just other men who have sadly lost their way. Benjamin Sharrett, Salford University, aged 19. Ross McCarthy, father of 3. Gareth Lancaster, 29, from Wigan. Zahid Ali, 13. Jordan Phillips, 34. Stevie Wiles, 33, from Morecambe. Gary Speed, 42. Stuart Adamson, 43. I could go on and on and on. But let's start a conversation, eh? Depression. It's black. Deep, deep black with no way out. But there's always a way out, you know? And that's the bit he didn't understand. That's the bit I don't understand. So he ran as if he was on a football pitch or a rugby pitch. It'd be faster, it'd be trickier, it'd be braver. He'd outfought them all. Then he'd hold the cup in the air, champion, the winner. Other men can only look on in envy as they are beaten by the champ. But it doesn't work here in life. It doesn't work because there is you, a man, a construct, a being, a man and no emotion, a dead man, a laughing man, a dead man, a family man, a dead man. A dead man, a dead man, a dead man. there is a light that will never come on again. So that's it. Why I want to share these stories about two of the men I have loved the most. One, who just didn't really want to leave the party. And the other was he wasn't enjoying the party being life. We know it can be a complicated journey for us all, but it can be even harder for some men. And if you're a man who has feelings, and I know men aren't supposed to have feelings, but if a man has feelings, then please keep talking. Never stop talking. I'm going to end with this. As a man, he was born to fight, sniffling, whinging, as this was his right, talking, bragging, holding pint pots aloft, embellishing tall tales, and then he'd take off, running, scrapping with intent, his mind focused, his knees bent, he'd circumvent the crowd to look for a way in. These are tall tales for all men, so let the story begin. Traces of faces, places my mind's been, reminds me they dived in, piled in, lied in, cried in. They've had crucial times of blood, gun, shit, endeavour. They've run errand for fools who can admire their own splendour. They've worked gravy trains, wagon mules and pitheads, and they've had to put up with their fair share of dickheads. Traces of faces, places my mind's been, reminds me they dived in, piled in, lied in, cried in. They've been kicked in, bled, starved, abused, and so totally used. They're black, they're red, they're cold, they're old, they're red, they're white, they're saviours, they're fathers, they're sons, so save us. Traces of faces, places my mind's been, reminds me they dived in, piled in, lied in, cried in. Be a man, some wise crack said to us. Do the right thing and cuss and spit and shit and die for land that doesn't even belong to us. You may be knock-kneed, bow-legged, frightened, dispossessed. You may be bottom of the barrel, ready to explode in stress. But don't worry, we really couldn't care less. Traces of faces, places my mind's been, reminds me they dived in, piled in, lied in, cried in. Some now think green, think pink and preen, contemplate their navel, taking their time to excel. Others, though, still have a bastardised view, raping, taking, rewarding themselves and their kind, so boring, so cruel, a life in rewind. Here they made the fateful error of taking them for granted, sticking themselves like they demand it, where they congregate, vegetate, emasculate, and so totally take their bitterness out of themselves. Well, isn't that great? Well, isn't life swell? Traces of faces, places my mind's been, reminds me they dived in, piled in, lied in, cried in. However, I do have hope, and it is this: a room full of men singing in bliss, in stadiums, arenas, fields and inns, with a strike of chords, a drum beat or just a bloody win. You see, we don't really want that much. A fishing rod, a football, a telly, a warm meal, loud farts, good jokes, just a chance to do something, anything. Traces of faces, places my mind's been, reminds me they dived in, piled in, lied in, cried in. Traces of faces, places my mind's been, reminds me they lied in, cried in, died in. Thank you very much. Thank you.